Father, we thank you for this opportunity to look at your word. We ask that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so we can see, hear, and understand what your word says, what it means to us, and how to apply it in our lives. And we thank you in the name of Yahushua. Amen. All right, so what's going on? We've got a situation where they're wandering around and they end up at Mount Horeb again. So they need some help, and they're going to get some help, but then they're going to complain about getting help because that's what the children of Israel did back then, right? So let's read and see what happens. And the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by way of Atharim, and he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow unto Yahuwah and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And Yahuwah hearkened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And the name of the place was called Hormah. Okay. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Sea of Reeds to go around the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became impatient because of the way. And the people spoke against Elohim and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread and there is no water, and our soul loathes this light bread. And Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people. And as much of the people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we have strayed, because we have spoken against Yahuwah and against you. Make supplication to Yahuwah that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses made supplication for the people. And Yahuwah said to Moses, make a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he see it, shall live. So Moses made a serpent of brass, and set it upon the pole, and it came to pass that if the serpent had bitten any man, then when he looked towards the serpent of brass, he lived. All right. So there's the Peshat version. What is the Peshat version? They come to a point, King Arad from Canaan comes and fights against him. They say, Elohim, if you will do this for us and we'll go up against them, we'll fight them, and we promise that we will destroy them if you will deliver them into our hands, and blah, blah, blah. And then they do that, they win. Then they complain because they have to take the long way to get somewhere. And he sends snakes to bite them. And if they make this serpent of brass and put it on a pole, everything will be okay if you look at it. And that's what we read in the Peshat version, extreme Cliff Notes version, right? So the Canaanite king of Arad. Okay? So what is Canaan? What is Canaan? The land of Canaan. Who inhabited the land of Canaan? Well, the descendants of Canaan. Okay. When we look at the event that Noah has gotten plastered and he's passed out in his tent naked, and Ham goes and he sees him and he goes and he tells Shem and Japheth, hey, you know, Pop's been at it again. He's been sipping the sauce. He's passed out again. So they go in there and they walk backwards and they cover him up. And Noah wakes up and he screams at Ham. Says, but does he scream at Ham or does he scream at someone else? Because he says, and he spoke to his youngest son. Well, Ham wasn't the youngest son, but Ham's youngest son was Canaan. And he says, you'll be cursed. Okay? So we step forward to find out exactly what causes this curse to be. Okay, we know that the descendants of Ham settle in Shinar and they build a tower called Babel. and it's the beginning of Babylon. It becomes the beginning of Babylon the Great, and it's the beginning of false religious belief. Anything that's going to contradict the word of Elohim begins. Canaan, however, if we read in the book of Jasher, settled somewhere he's not supposed to settle. And he takes the land that is allotted to Shem. Shem doesn't say anything. And Canaan dwells in the land of Shem, and as a result becomes a curse. Okay? So now we have a curse, and we have a king from this land of curse called Arad, that means to isolate or to hide away. It means to sequester. Okay? So right off the bat, we can come up with an idea in this, is that when we seek to follow something that goes contrary to the word of Elohim, we end up isolated. And our king becomes isolation. Okay? Our king becomes something that we create away from Elohim. Okay? And we can equate this to what we get in Samuel when the people say, we want a flesh and blood king. Because Yahuwah ceases to be real to us, life becomes real, and I can do all things through me who strengthens me. I become king of my life. Okay? And as a result, I settle someplace that I should not be settling. And the result is that I become isolated. I become separated from my Elohim. And he dwelt in the south. He dwelt in the Negev. Well, in the south, and the Negev is dry land. It's desert. Okay? So there is no prosperity, although I think there's prosperity. Okay? All right. And Israel came by the way of the Atharim. Okay, so Israel, if we think of Israel, we look at the roots of that is Sar El, okay, the prince of El, or the authority of El. So we consider this the authority of Elohim. And we say Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. It's not so much Bnei as Bana, that we are restored and established in the authority of Elohim. And if we are restored and established in the authority of Elohim, then we have to be careful of the steps we take. So they come by the way of Atharim. Now, Atharim as a word means spies. But if we take it a little bit deeper into another definition, it means to take steps or to establish a procedure. Okay, so as someone who is supposedly living according to the authority of Elohim, do I try to establish steps and procedures to move against a curse, to move against something that is in my life that I want out of my life, so I come up with a game plan to fight against it. I come up with the procedures to fight against it. As opposed to going and sitting down and having a conversation with my Elohim, so that my Elohim will establish my paths and my ways, I come up with a way to get myself out of where I've gotten myself into that I don't need to be. And what happens? They fought against Israel. The curse fights against the authority of Elohim. Now think about that for a second. Is being in Canaan, think about this, such a bad thing from a carnal point of view? I have what I want. I'm comfortable. I'm happy. Yet I'm not living my full potential under the authority of Elohim. I'm simply going through the motions. I'm simply established in whatever procedures I have. And the result is that I fight against Canaan. I fight against Arad. I seek to fight against isolation and end up being taken captive by the curse itself. What does that mean? I'm living a form of devotion to Elohim, but I'm denying the very power in that devotion. Okay? So it becomes a problem. Now we go to verse 2. And Israel vowed a vow to Yahuwah and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. Did Israel even have to bother with this? Did they even have to bring this up? From a Peshat point of view, we already know that Elohim had told them, go in there. I will go in front of you. I will fight your battles. You won't have to lift a finger. I will destroy them in front of you. And you can just simply take possession. Is that ever good enough for any of us, considering what we've just considered in verse 1? We do not allow Elohim to do what he promised that he would do for us. We bargain with Elohim. Okay? Just like Jacob. Jacob bargained with Elohim. He's already been promised the whole land. He's already been told, I will be with you. But he says, if you will be with me and, help me out of this mess, then I will be your servant. Well, I've already given it to you because you're already my servant. But we deny the fact that we have a relationship with our Elohim. And we bargain with our Elohim. If he will do something for us that he's already promised that he will do for us, then we will do what he says we should do. Shouldn't we simply seek to live according to the instruction, knowing that Elohim is already going to do what he said he would do for us? So they doubt. They doubt that he will do, so they try to bargain. Have you ever bargained with Elohim? Yes. Because although I've already been promised something, I still bargain with my Elohim because I don't believe he will deliver it to me. I have to be in there and I have to cut the deal. Right? I have to cut the deal. Elohim can't be the deal maker. I have to cut the deal. All right. And then it goes down, and Yahuwah hearkened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites. Okay. Yahuwah perceived, discerned, understood the call of Israel. He understood what they were saying. He understood that they didn't understand. Elohim understood that they didn't understand. So he went forward and he did what he said he was going to do in the first place. Okay? He didn't give them anything special. He didn't give them anything. They didn't win this deal. He was simply providing something he'd already said they were going to do. Israel simply thought that, okay, he's done this for us now. Maybe he's real. Maybe he's present. Maybe he's something that we can depend on. Maybe Yahuwah Elohim is something I can depend on in my life. Let me say that again. Think about this. Think about this. Maybe Yahuwah Elohim is something that I can depend on in my life. Maybe. Because after all, I can do all things through me who strengthens me. Right? Maybe Yahuwah Elohim is a force that can do something for me in my life. All right. So they utterly destroyed them, and the place was called Hormah. So they went in and destroyed the Canaanites as a whole, but it says the place was called Hormah. It's as if they fought against the Canaanites, but they ended up in one single place called Hormah. Okay. Hormah means destruction. Okay. Why would they name the place Hormah? Elohim has just gone in and fought the battle for them. Yet they consider it their victory. And when they consider it their victory, it becomes destruction. Because after all, the battle is mine. It's not Yahuwah Elohim's. Okay? And it becomes destruction to me. Because now I'm set on a path of destruction. Because Elohim has done what I told him to do. I had God in a box. I let God out of the box. He did whatever, a good God in the box will do. And now I can go on and settle in what I have accomplished without giving Elohim the credit for it. That's a very important concept there for what we're going to continue reading in a minute. Okay? So now that they've done all this, and they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Sea of Reeds to go around the land of Eden, and the soul of the people became impatient because of the way. Now it explains this to us in the book of Exodus, why they went this long way about. They've just come out of Egypt. Why did they go the long way? Why didn't they just go right into the Edomites and fight with the Edomites? Because the Edomites were stronger than they were. They weren't ready to fight the Edomites. Why do we not go from point A to point B immediately? I want to go from point A to point B. I want my plans to come to fruition immediately so that I can move on to other bigger and better plans. So I start off and I buy all the stuff that I need to go from point A to point B. And about halfway into it, I realize that I have all these spare parts left over because the widget that I need to go from point A to point B doesn't exactly fit together the way it's supposed to for some reason. Because who needs instructions? I just leave those in the box, right? We always want to go from point A to point B. Why not go straight into Edom? Because they're not ready to go straight into Edom. I'm going to take you all the way around and strengthen you before you come up against the Edomites. Because when you come up against the Edomites, you're going to find out that they are very fierce. And if I take you up against the Edomites right away, they're going to destroy you. Not maybe destroy you physically, but what Exodus tells me, you're not going to go up against them unless you lose heart. Because if you lose heart, then you're going to want to go right back to Egypt and all this. But what happens? What happens? They go the long way. Elohim will never take us the direct path. Because although we think we're ready to go the direct path, we're not necessarily ready to go the direct path. Grading. It's a great idea. I'm going to just cut a slope. And the water's no longer building up here, but now it's going down the slope, and now I have a lake about 20 feet away from where I was. Because I have to continue to grade all the way down the street to bring it in line with what's going on, because the flow of the street, it's got a crown at the top and it flows this way and then it flows that way. Okay? So I have to take into account all the engineering that's involved in that. And it's like anything else that we do in life. I have to take into account all the little things that I will leave out if I don't pay attention to the full picture. We don't see the full picture. What they want is they want to go through Edom. They want to go straight to where they need to be. Okay? They want to conquer the flesh without having a spirit that is strong enough. We'll come back to that in just a second. I'm going to draw this up here so that we can understand the difference between conquering the flesh and conquering the spirit. Okay? All right. So what happens? And the people, verse 5, and the people spoke against Elohim and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? Did the people want to leave Egypt in the first place? They did, until they didn't. Have you ever been that way? I want to do this right up until the point that I don't. I tell people at work all the time, especially people that are supposed to tie off. And I get this. I'm not going to fall. I do this every day. I'm not going to fall. And if I fell, I would just do a flip and land on my feet. And I tell them right back, you are absolutely not going to fall. It's never happened to you before, right up until the point that you fall and it happens to you. Okay? number one killer in any industry is belief. It's never going to happen because it's never happened until it happens. Right? So, did they want to leave Egypt? A lot of them were very comfortable being slaves. They got to eat, they got to drink. Yeah, they had to go out and pick their own straw and make their own mud and all this other stuff. But there was always pots full of melons and pots full of meat and melons and leeks and garlic. We read about that in abundance when they were complaining about not having food, not having meat, right? So have you brought us out here to the wilderness to die? Because we can't have it our way. So have we ever looked back fondly on the good old days when things aren't working out for us right now? Because it was so much better when things were less complicated. Although, when we look back, we don't ever remember the difficult part of the good old days when things were less complicated. You know, little things like having to break a package of ramen noodles in two so that you would have 2 meals out of it instead of one. Scraping the bottom of the jar of peanut butter and hoping that there's enough to go on the cracker. Okay? Not having enough money to make it the full week. Trying to figure out who to pay and who not to pay. But those were the good old days, right? Why did you take us out of Egypt? Why did you take us out of Mitzarim? The root is matzor, that means to be under siege, to be bombarded. Why did you take us out of the place where we were being bombarded? Matzor also means a narrow place. Why did you take us out of a place where we were being bombarded and confined to bring us out to this wilderness to die? Okay, so let's look at this word for die, this moot. Moot, aside from to die, also means to die prematurely from a neglect of ethical and moral conduct. So I'm complaining about being in bondage, being in the wilderness, which is a blank canvas. And here they're going to die from ethical and moral, a lack of ethical and moral conduct. They're going to die because they simply don't believe. They simply don't want to follow the rules. They want to do it the way they want to do it. Okay? There's no bread and there is no water. Are these physical things to sustain them physically? There has to be bread and there has to be water, right? We loathe this light bread. What is the light bread that they loathe? Manna. I loathe the things that Elohim provides because I'm not interested in my spirit being sustained. I'm interested in my physical body being sustained. What can I do in order to sustain my physical body? I have to go back into bondage. I have to go back into slavery. I have to go back into my limiting beliefs in order to sustain myself physically. This becomes the difference between the Vav and the Zion. They're identical letters in their construction. All Hebrew letters are constructed from other Hebrew letters, correct? Except for one letter. The Yod is the only letter that stands by itself. Now, Yod has two things. Yod is the root letter of the name Yahuwah. It also represents the power of Elohim to bring manifestation. But Yod, Yad, is the Hebrew word for hand that means strength. The Paleo-Hebrew pictograph of the Yad is this alien arm that only has 2 fingers on the hand. I hope NASA doesn't see that with all the UFOs that are flying around now to distract us from whatever it is the government's doing. I didn't say that, though. The Yad, my strength, my power, my ability. We have 2 identical letters. We have the Vav, which is a Vav, with a Yod on the top. The Vav is the sixth letter of the alphabet, represents humankind. But what else was created on the sixth day? The beast of the field, the Behemah, that quadruped that has no senses, something that is in a state of spiritual poverty, carried by its spiritual poverty. Okay? So I have flesh, my carnal desire to have things. When I was teaching the kids back in the day, I can say kids because Mickey and Ed aren't here. I say, they're not young goats. Okay. When I was teaching the youth class, I lost that thought, so we'll have to go on. We'll come back to it. Anyway, the Vav represents the flesh. But we have the Zion, which is the exact same thing. The Vav topped with the Yod, but this time it's topped with the Yod. When the Vav is topped with the spiritual knowledge or the awareness of the presence of Elohim overhead, things change, because it depends on what? It's the seventh letter of the alphabet. The seventh letter of the alphabet, the Zion. Zion as a word means weapon. It means a cutting instrument. The ancient Paleo-Hebrew pictograph of it is a plow. Okay. The root of that word is zan. That means nutrition, food. Okay. The seventh letter, the seventh day, is the day of rest. So the Zion represents the spiritual connection that brings us protection, nourishment, and rest. Okay? I depend on Elohim. Okay? So, what is the difference? There's no bread, there's no water. They are stuck in the sixth day, as opposed to the manna, which they loathe. They don't want a relationship with Yahweh Elohim. Do I have to have a relationship with Yahweh Elohim? I certainly do not. I don't. I don't have to have a relationship with Elohim in my life. I can go through my day-to-day, and I can go to work, and I can make lots of money, and I can have bank accounts and cars and stuff, and I can be perfectly content until I'm not content. Or I can have not so much, or I can have just as much and have a relationship with Yahweh Elohim and recognize that it's within Him that I live and move and have my existence. And now I have a connection where I have a means of sitting down and having a conversation with Yahweh Elohim and allowing my Elohim to feed me spiritually so that I can move forward. But here, they're only interested in their flesh. They're not interested in the relationship with Elohim. Their soul loathes the light bread. They loathe the very word of Elohim. So something has to change. There has to be a choice that's made. Verse 6, Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much of the people of Israel died. Okay? So we come in that they send Seraphim. Seraphim. Why would they send seraphim to bite the people? Why would they send these majestic angelic beings with 6 wings that cover their eyes and and they're in the presence of Elohim, and that's the only real place that you read about them, is they are there with the sole purpose of worshiping Yahweh Elohim. Because seraphim happens to mean a poisonous snake, well before it means a majestic being. But it becomes a choice now. Seraphim do what? What is their sole purpose? I just mentioned it a second ago. Sole purpose is to praise Elohim. Sole purpose is to be in the presence of Elohim. But it also means a poisonous snake. Okay? Let's hold on to that for just a second. We'll come back to it. Okay? They bit the people and much of the people died. Okay? So we'll come back to that too. Remind me. I'm gonna underline it. Much of the people died. He sent snakes, and the snakes are biting the people, and the people are dying. Let's go with that, Peshat point of view. Verse 7, and the people came to Moses and said, literally, and when we read it in King Jimmy and all these other things, we have sinned. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what sin is. It's kind of an overrated word. The word is chatat. We have committed chatat. We have strayed away. Okay, we have strayed away because we have spoken against Yahuwah and against you. You, Moses, make supplication to Yahuwah that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses made supplication for the people. What's the first problem that we find here?
Going through Moses.
He went through somebody else. Go through the third party. Alan, I have this problem. I need you to pray for me that my problem will go away. This is one of my favorite. Michael, I have an unmentionable, is that the way you say it? An unmentioned prayer request. I need you to pray something that you have absolutely no idea what it is. So that, I have an unspoken prayer request. I need you to speak this unspoken prayer request for me so that I'll get better from the problem that I have that I'm not going to tell you about, for you to pray for me about, and it'll go away because Elohim knows my problem. You don't, but I'm asking you to pray for me. Works every time, doesn't it? I don't want a relationship with Yahweh Elohim. I want you to have the relationship for me. So you go and pray for him. That the serpents that go away. That we be delivered from the serpents. Question is, it's a trick question, so think about it before you answer it. Can does Yahuwah have the authority to remove the serpents? Trick question. Does Yahuwah Elohim have the authority to remove these serpents?
Yes.
No. He does not. Why? Because the serpent on a pole is the tet. The letter tet. The letter tet is a continuing theme from the very beginning of the Torah all the way through. Whether I yield to the serpent or I do not yield to the serpent. He will not interfere with your free will, and the serpent becomes a choice. I can let it bite me. I can let it poison me because I make the wrong choice in tet. What is the choices in tet? The tet is composed of the vav submitting itself to the Zion. Okay? So the first choice in tet is my flesh, my carnal side must yield to my spiritual side. Okay? I need both of them. I have to have a physical aspect in my life, but I have to have a spiritual aspect in order to make the physical aspect work. I cannot have a physical aspect that makes the spiritual part of me work. I have to think about things before I can act upon them. If I act upon things before I think about them, then I end up with a whole bunch of extra screws when I try to put the furniture together from IKEA. I have to know what the directions are before I take action. Okay? I have to yield myself to my Elohim. I have to be in a relationship with my Elohim. And in that, I live and move and have my existence within him, that I have the protection, the nourishment, and the rest that comes from the spiritual realm that actually is real. Because if I don't, the other choice in this is simply to be the Nachash. There's an eyeball, here's a Nachash tongue, eating the dust of the ground. What did Elohim say to the snake? Because you have done this, you will crawl on your belly all the rest of your days and you will eat the dust of the ground. Okay? My choice is I can seek the protection, nourishment, and rest that comes from a relationship with Yahweh Elohim, or I can succumb fully to the enticements of the Satan. Okay? And that is not to become fully involved in the enticements of some little guy named Satan that's dressed up in a red suit with a pitchfork. I cannot blame it all on the devil, because the devil doesn't make me do anything. I choose. He used the serpent to show the woman a piece of fruit. Yahweh Elohim had said, you can eat freely from all the trees of the garden, just don't eat from this one. But she saw the fruit, and it looked good. It was pleasing to the eye. She saw that it was good for food. She saw that it would make her smart, so she chose to eat it. My spiritual being can be persuaded to do anything if there is a lack of physical action. Well, wait a minute, you just said that if there's only physical action, the spiritual controls the physical, but now you're saying that there has to be physical in order for the spiritual to be the right way. How can that be? Because it takes physical action for us to sit down and have a conversation with our Elohim. It takes physical action for you to pick up this book and open it and do something unique, like read it. It takes physical action to pick up this book, pick up a pen, pick up a piece of paper, and read it, and take down notes and say, what does that mean? If I don't feed the Spirit, then the Spirit wanders. And if the Spirit wanders, it makes the wrong choice. And if it makes the wrong choice, it tells the physical aspect of me, it's okay. And she gave of the fruit that she had given to the man, and he ate of it as well. So the physical does not do what it's supposed to do to strengthen the spiritual. The spiritual becomes weak, feeds back to the physical, and before you know it, you're living in apostasy. You're living in idolatry. Okay? Ish and Isha compose the Adam. The man and the woman both compose us. We are both Ish, we're both Isha. We're both physical creatures and spiritual creatures. Okay? All right. So we also look at Nachash. Nachash is in a roundabout way a root for the word kasef, that means silver. So there is redemption to be found in Nachash, but so far we've only seen that it uses the word seraphim until we get to the next verse or so, where it says, now make a serpent and put it on a pole. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, so back to the question. Yahuwah will not remove the serpents. He will not remove your authority to make the choice in Tet. He will not interfere with your free will.
It's not that he can't,
He won't. He will not.
It's a difference.
Well, there's a difference that he can't or he won't. He simply cannot. And he cannot because he will not violate his own rule.
Because he made us.
Yeah.
He cannot
Yahuwah,
according to what he said.
Yahuwah Elohim will not violate his own Torah. Okay? So, in a sense, he cannot. He won't step out of line. We can violate the Torah, or we cannot. Yahuwah Elohim simply cannot because he will not. Okay? All right. So, Yahuwah said to Moses, here it goes, make a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. Not simply when you look at it. I can look at it and not see it. I can look at it and not see it. I can show you my point of view, but you don't necessarily have to grasp my point of view until you're able to see where I'm coming from. Okay? But again, it uses here, put a seraph on a pole. Why put a seraph on a pole? Because there's a difference now between something that is venomous that will kill you and the concept of praise. Okay? I can choose to either ignore Elohim. In that case, I don't see the serpent on the pole. Or I can choose to build my relationship with Elohim. It's such a, to me, it's such a more fulfilling concept to consider building a relationship with Elohim than saying, I'm going to worship Elohim. What does that mean? I have no idea what it means. I know what it means to build a relationship. I don't worship my wife. Don't let her know. But I do everything I can to enhance the relationship on a regular basis. That's my choice. So what does Moses do? On the last page. And Moses made a serpent of brass. It says, Vayes Moshe Nachash. Okay, he made a Nachash. He didn't make a seraph. He made a Nachash. He made a serpent. Okay, something that we recognize.
Easier to form.
Probably easier to form. Not all those arms to cover all those eyes. Okay, he made a Nachash. He made a means of redemption and set it on a pole. And he put it up in the air. And it came to pass that a serpent had bitten any man. So the children and the women got off free. They didn't have to worry about getting bit, right? Okay. When it had bitten et ish. Et ish. When it had bitten any man, when he looked towards the serpent of brass, he lived. Is there a difference in brass between polished brass and tarnished brass? Oh, it's okay. Tarnished is judgment. Polished is redemption. Okay? That's a choice. What kind of brass am I looking at? Do I look at my life and judge myself and bring condemnation to myself? Or do I look at my life and see redemption? Do I look at my relationship with my Elohim and see judgment only from my Elohim because I've been so bad, I sinned, I'm full of something called sin. That's why I don't want to eat dinner. Or have I walked away to where I have been taken captive by a rod that has isolated me away from my Elohim? Do I look at judgment or do I look at redemption? It's up to Ish to figure that out.
So it's not clearly said in the text if it was polished or tarnished.
It's not. It doesn't say. I would have to, if I were thinking about it, I would say it would be polished brass. So that when you put it up in the sunlight of the desert, people, 600,000 people away, could see it.
So was it really a nakash that he formed?
See, that's where the Torah forces you to come to a conclusion on this. Is it a snake? Is it an angel? Or is it the idea of the tet? Did they understand the idea of the tet?
Well, paleo, and it would have been paleo at that time.
If it was paleo at that time, then you would have had this. Okay?
Which is the top.
But I'm willing to think that it was something like this.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Where did they just come from? And Egypt would have been a major influencer in their belief system. Okay? That's why everything is so speculative of what it was. You know, do I look for the adder in the basket? Do I consider this? Do I look at some deity of Egypt? Or do I look at a concept that Elohim wants me to understand that exists from the Torah? Was this written for them back then, or was this written for us today?
Is that why it calls out Nakash instead of Seraphim?
Well, it uses seraphim. It uses seraphim twice. Then it uses Nachash in the very last when he actually creates it.
Right.
So the idea behind it, not so much the mechanics of whether it was a snake or whether it was a tet or whether it was whatever other symbol they probably put on it. It's the idea that we need to understand in order to be able to apply the Torah to our lives. Okay? When we look at things and we want everything to simply be in a pashat state, because that's what we understand. We understand surface level things. Then we get sidetracked in asking that. And there's nothing wrong with asking that. Okay? We want to bring it in to where we understand, how do I apply this? And the application is that Elohim is not always going to do things the way we want them to be done. That's the first thing. Do I get frustrated when Elohim doesn't give me what I want immediately the way I want it? Why do I get frustrated? Do I need to have a sit-down conversation with my Elohim to find out why? Because that becomes the choice in Tet. I can submit to my flesh and get all upset and angry and then go out and do things on my own and move to Canaan or take over property of something that doesn't belong to me and become a curse. Or I can sit down with my Elohim and understand from his point of view, where am I going? I can be totally and completely engulfed in the flesh, or I can submit myself to my Elohim. I can submit myself to the fact that my mind has to be spiritually connected to my Elohim in order for my physical life to move forward. Also understanding that my physical life has to take the time to sit down and have a conversation with my Elohim, has to sit down and look at the word of my Elohim to understand how to communicate with my Elohim in the first place. So this concept that we look at in this, will I die if I get bitten by something poisonous in my life? It doesn't have to be a rattlesnake or a copperhead. I can get bitten by an opportunity. And that opportunity can distract me from everything that I should be doing, following something that has enticed me away because it's pleasant to the eye and good for food. Okay, that's what this brings us into at the sod level of this event. The sod level starts to give us the metaphysical application of this particular line in the Torah. So the Cliff Notes version of this is, when I am distracted by something that could potentially poison my life, am I willing to see my choice? Okay, because we don't always see the choice. We only see one side of the story. But what this is telling us is that you need to see both sides and then make the choice. I can choose the judgment route, or I can choose the redemption route. I can choose to poison my life and bring it straight to the Edomites, or I can choose to go around them until I'm strong enough to fight them. And it's interesting. Edom is the root of the word Adam. I can choose to strengthen myself enough to fight off the flesh, and as a result, fight the spirit of Esau that is constantly beating on me. And there we go, in a nutshell. Questions? Yes.
Okay,
I don't know.
bear with me. Bear with me.
No, this is about snakes, not about bears.
Okay. So the whole Exodus thing to me is kind of like this big military, adventure. And it's all about training. It's all about an education. It's all about learning, leadership and all this stuff. So we get down to this, and I kind of have I have a problem with Yahuwah can't, because I think he can. And of course they went to Moses, because they've always gone to Moses as an intercessor. Lots of examples of him being the intercessor for all these things. To me, this is a line in the sand. It's kind of the blessings and curses thing. It's a line in the sand that says, no, we're not going to go that route anymore. This is coming to an end. You have to be responsible for you. And that's why we have we have to make it, as an individual, we have to make a choice.
You have to be responsible for your
Yes.
relationship with God.
Exactly. And then he goes to Moses and says, make this thing.
Yeah.
So it does, it's kind of compounds the,
Yeah.
And then later on.
and maybe I'm just on the surface. I don't know.
I can come to you and say, okay, I have this potential surgery coming up. This is what could potentially happen. Keep me in mind. Ultimately, it's my responsibility to seek Elohim and say, remind me when I try to walk by myself. But, all throughout, from their leaving Egypt all the way through Leviticus and Numbers, they depend, exactly what you said, they depend on somebody else to make the choice for them. This goes back to, are you hearing the shofar or are you hearing the trumpet? Here, they're being told specifically, Elohim is telling Moses, my hands are tied. I will not interfere with their free will. I will not. I will not violate my own rule. I made this rule. I am Yahuwah. I do not change. I made this rule. I'm not going to violate it. Therefore, I cannot violate it because I made this rule. I could change it. Yeah, sure. I could interfere. But then if I do it, then I'm basically not. What am I trying to say here? I am basically not the Ein Sof. I am basically not beyond everything. I'm limiting myself, and I'm putting myself on your level.
Yahuwah sets the standards for Yahuwah.
Yeah.
So according to what Yahuwah has set for himself, he can, because he set the standard for himself.
But he's also, in many occasions, says, get out of the way, I'm going to wipe these people out. I'm sick of this. I'll start a whole new group with you.
Yeah.
And he changes his mind.
He did it.
Yeah.
Moses causes him to change his mind.
Okay, well, let's think about that, though. Let's think about that. Let's look at that. He promised Abraham that through your seed I will bless, right? So he says, I'm going to wipe out all these people, seed of Abraham, but through you, Moses, also the seed of Abraham, I will start over. And I will still bless the people through the seed of Abraham. It's just, I'm going to just pick this seed. You're still non-GMO. Okay? So he technically doesn't go against his own word. He's just going to wipe out all these people because he's sick of them. He's disgusted with them. But Moses, still the seed of Abraham, says, hey, hold the phone there.
I think that the serpent on the pole, I mean, and it could have been that Moses didn't understand what he was supposed to make. But shouldn't it be I'm going to show you to trust me. And so, shouldn't he be putting something on a pole that points to Yah and not to Egypt?
But no
And that's
matter,
why I have a problem
Let-
with
but no
that.
matter what you put on the pole,
It's your perspective.
right?
Yeah.
That, there's the choice again.
Again,
That's why I
again,
think maybe it was Ted.
again,
Because that's the choice.
you know, we're thinking about whatever he put on the pole. Whatever he, well, no. Okay, whatever he put on the pole, regardless of what he put on the pole, would have been a violation of the first 3 commandments.
I know.
Okay,
Exactly.
so this is what it
Yeah.
takes us. Takes
and
it
that's what happened. It
from a
was
physical understanding, from a Peshat point of view. Now it becomes an instruction point of view. There's no pole, there's no serpent, but there is a message in this
I think
that
that's-
we need to make the right choice. Was this written for the people at the time, or was this written for the people in the future?
Yeah.
They had the Levitical system going on. The Levites told them what they would not do, how they would do. We are not in a Levitical priesthood, we're in the priesthood of Melchizedek. So we have to have the instruction in order to walk in the priesthood of Melchizedek. We have to be able to make the right choice in Tet in order to walk in the priesthood of Melchizedek. That's, at the end of the day, that's where it comes down to.
Yeah. But in like, yeah, I can't remember if it's Jasher or Jubilee, they ended up worshiping this pole.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and so.
And it ended up,
We know that
yeah,
according to history, it existed.
yeah. Well, there's no doubt that it existed. But, yeah, the exact thing that he did not want to happen
destroyed.
would happen. And eventually the snakes went away and the pole went away. But the concept of it remains for those of it who have ears to hear, let them hear.
Yeah.
Yes?
I've heard, where did this come from as far as some other understanding that it was supposed to be some kind of image on a banner?
That's what I've heard. That's what Stephen Pigeon said.
Yeah, again, we're bringing the submarine up to the surface to speculate on Peshat. Peshat, we have a storyline. It doesn't make a difference if it was a pole made out of olive wood or a pole made out of ironwood. It doesn't make a difference if it was a snake or a paleo or a snake or a tav.
Or a banner.
The concept is that we have to make the right choice in Tet.
Yeah.
And the choice in Tet starts with the serpent, who is manipulated by the Satan. Not some little guy dressed in red, but he's manipulated by Shittim, emotions that are not tempered by the Spirit, emotions that are not disciplined enough to make the right choice in Tet. And those emotions will always choose the carnal side before they choose the spiritual side. Yes. I don't know.
So what's the banner?
Go ahead. Say banner. Say banner. Go ahead.
Because it doesn't say that. I don't
Yeah.
know, that's the reason why I asked, because
Yeah.
I was wondering where that came from. But, okay, I'm gonna say a few things that
Yeah.
might be a little bit off, but probably not, because of what my understanding is in my heart. As far as, so just to make sure it gets out right. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I left mine with the youth. Yeah, I left mine with the youth class.
Back to yours yet?
Yeah, I haven't remembered.
But anyway, well, one other thing was, I'd heard that Netzarim means the land of trials and tribulations. Is that kind of a good definition?
Yeah. I mean, the root matzor means to be bombarded. It means like a castle to be under siege. It means to be narrowed, to be limited in what you can do.
But in a roundabout way, this experience that they're complaining about in the wilderness kind of sounds like trials and tribulations more than
Yeah.
what they came out of in Egypt. So I can see how they were thinking that way, because I guess you could say their flesh was satisfied, but their spirit wouldn't.
Let's consider.
taxed in any way.
Let's think about remembering the way things were back in Mitzrayim, the way things were back in Egypt. It mentions that a lot, that they remember that. Their ability to move forward is hindered by their limited beliefs, their limiting beliefs. Their limiting beliefs are that they are willing to settle for much less than what Elohim has to offer them. And how many times do we allow our limiting beliefs to keep us in bondage, as opposed to accepting what Elohim can provide for us? Now, this isn't a blab it and grab it, name it and claim it kind of thing. It's simply, I have to move beyond the concept of I can do all things through me who strengthens me. If I say I can do all things through Mashiach that strengthens me, then it's all things through the anointing of Yahuwah, all the things through being within Elohim. And then I have to be willing to, want to explore the possibilities of that relationship. So when I look at Mitzrayim and look back at Mitzrayim with fondness, then I allow my limiting beliefs to say it's perfectly fine to be where you are. You don't have to move any further than where you are. And sometimes that's a perfect thing. Sometimes it's not.
Okay.
Knowing the difference is the key.
I remember what I was going to say. And here I go again.
How can I distract you, Super?
Oh, about Yahuwah doing what his word says, and he cannot. And you're right. In my opinion, he cannot. And the reason why he cannot do something is because he's establishing this plan, and he's slowly revealing it through the scriptures to us, the means of redemption of all mankind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeshua is going to be sent to pay the price for our sin and to redeem us back to the Father. I guess that's basically. And then there's a lot of in-between stuff in there, but that's the reason why the formulation was in there, and he cannot do anything to screw that up, so to speak.
I think it's amazing that he has this plan, and we know.
But
'Cause you
well,
almost-
again, here's another thought before, I know.
Before he forgets.
I'll forget. Go.
You might as well go.
You're much, much younger. You'll remember.
Before you forget, because you might be saying what I'm going to say.
Well, I just think it's amazing that the Creator, who knows all things, because I'm always like, he can do anything. So he could literally just create the family that he wants to bless.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we think, but he knows everything. We need these choices in order for him to have the bride for his son that he wants. Like, literally, this is either the only way or one of the only ways
Right.
that this can happen, that he can actually have the end result. Even though we know he's all power. I mean, it's kind of a conundrum to wrap your mind around, but it's amazing. So this is his perfect plan, you know.
He's already done the calculations and already sees.
He sees the end result, and
Yeah.
anyway, he's outside time, so he's already living the end result, whatever.
It's already
No,
done.
by the way, we're already there in the future.
Yes.
Or it's the future with us, but he knows, he's a million years ahead. But, where was it going with this? Okay, yeah, basically, if he does something, it will make Satan's kingdom advance and that's not a good way of saying it, but it'll tip off Satan, because Satan's part of this whole mess too, that he has to be defeated, and we have to learn how to defeat him ourselves as believers in the Word. You know,
That's good.
it's us that needs to learn how to utilize that authority to speak to the mountain and say, be removed and cast into the sea. Or there's several other examples like that that are what you'd call impossible. You know, how am I gonna speak to a mountain and make it move and throw it into the sea?
Right.
But,
You do it every day.
but yeah, you
Because,
can, but it isn't
you
a
know.
real mountain, and it isn't thrown into the sea, because you don't see that happening.
How many, well, no, I mean, how many mountains have y'all come across in your lifetime? How many mountains will you come across by the end of the week? Young people, how many mountains do you, you know, we look at the idea of speaking to a physical mountain, and okay, if I tell Everest to move, it's not going to move. If I talk to an Everest in my life that I just don't see as surmountable, it can move if I have an unlimited belief in the power of my Elohim to work with me. But just because I tell it to be removed doesn't mean it's going to be removed. The unlimited power only comes through my willingness to see it. Which takes us back to this. You know, the mountain becomes the serpent. Overcoming it becomes the other option. You know, it's the application of this particular lesson has a lot of value. What I was thinking about earlier with the kids, you know, the flesh being, you know, your own power, and the spiritual always dealing with the mental. As I always used to tell them in class, think things through before you take any action on anything. Don't do things simply because your carnal point of view is telling you it's the right thing to do. That's what I was thinking about earlier. And that's the difference in the two Vavs, the Vav and the Zion as well.
There's a podcast that actually somebody who came to our fellowship told me about. It's called the Bema podcast.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with that?
FEMA?
Bema.
Bema, no.
Bema.
No, I'm familiar with FEMA because we still build houses for them. But
Anyway, one of the points that they made was that Yah made us different than the beasts.
Mhm.
The beasts are controlled by their desires, whereas Ish doesn't have to be controlled by their desires. They can be restrained and self-controlled. And that's the difference between Ish and Ish.
Right.
I thought that was good.
And that's exactly it. We are uniquely made.
Uniquely, yeah.
You know.
This is good.
And it's interesting, you know, that it says, "For Elohim loved the world in such a way that he gave his uniquely begotten Son." You know, he was no different than us, but he gave that. He gave his uniquely begotten Ben, or his uniquely begotten Bana, his uniquely begotten, his uniquely orchestrated restoration, that who would ever believe in that restoration would not perish but have life. You know, that takes it beyond simply believing in the Son to now understanding what the redemption requires.
Seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
The silver, where's that come in? I must have missed it.
Well, the silver is, these two words are connected through roots. So the connection of the Nachash, the serpent, is connected in a roundabout way to Kasef, being silver, the redemption.
Could that too been added to the brass to do something?
No. It's just, this isn't anywhere in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that within the root systems of Hebrew that somehow, I mean, these two words are related or share similar roots.
There's something about that you can get back to about the children of Israel dying in large numbers as part of the whole thing. I thought you had mentioned something about wanting to
Probably
get back to
did.
that.
Let me see, because I underlined it.
Yeah, right here it's 6.
And much of the people of Israel died. Okay, much of the people of Israel. So the fiery serpents among the people bit the people, and much of the people of Israel died. Much of Bnei Yisrael died. If I say that I am established in the authority of Elohim, but I make the wrong choice in Tet, then slowly I die a spiritual death. And this is beyond the idea of a lot of people died because they got bit by snakes. This brings it into, it could be a singular. If I am restored and established in the authority of Yahuwah Elohim in my daily life, and I slowly allow myself to be pulled away by my carnal desires, then I begin to die a spiritual death. Why did they die? You know, because why did the people of Israel die prior to getting to the Jordan the second time to cross over? Because it was the first generation. The first generation was corrupt. It was full of unethical and immoral conduct. That causes death, and this is what had to happen in these people. The only way that unethical and immoral conduct is going to die is for me to make the right choice in Tet. And that's why I wanted to come back to this after we got to the end. Thanks for reminding me. So I would have.
It makes me think like when they say,
Huh?
it makes me think like when they say you're never going to intentionally, or you're never going to like unintentionally walk towards Yahuwah, but like you will, like when you're not paying attention, you know, we're always going to move farther away. So it kind of makes me think, you know, you say that you're established, but you know,